Hi, I'm Ryan Curran, and this is my Biology 153 critical assignment for Dr. Arthur Barella's class. And in this critical assignment, we're going to be doing a discussion of a specific organ system and a specific organ within the system. And I've decided to go with discussing the anatomy of the muscular system. And the muscular system is something that's not generally seen as a stereotypical organ because a lot of people associate the word organ with vital organs like the stomach, heart, lungs. But as we have discussed in this class and learned prior to this, muscles are also organs, and the muscular system is a system of many working organs put together. So let's get started. In the anatomy of the muscular system, the muscular system is an organ system made up of skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. And that's very important. That very first sentence, those three different types of muscles we learned about in our lab and we learned about in our class over and over again. And they're kind of the basis of the entire muscular system as a whole. The next thing says it dictates movement of the body and helps circulate blood throughout the body. So the muscular system is the main thing that dictates the movement of the body because it's connected to the skeletal system, which is the basis and the structure of the body. But the muscular system, skeletal muscles specifically, move bones and joints and are what keep us moving and doing different movements like walking, running, jumping, anything that you do during the day when you have to move consciously. And as we're gonna learn soon, a lot of subconscious movements too are also controlled by muscles. Next, muscles are either voluntary or involuntary, which goes to what I was just saying. Muscles are either something that you are consciously acting on and doing, or they're involuntary, which means they're more of a subconscious action. Next says every movement that a person makes requires a use of a muscle. So even when you're inside of an organ, like your heart beating, a muscle is working with your heart. Stereotypically, people will think of muscles as biceps brachii, something like that, and the movement of the arm. But the reality is there's a lot more complex muscles and a lot more of a importance to muscles than just movements of ligaments. Not that that's not important, but the heart, as an example, is using cardiac muscles, which helps the heart pump, and without it, the heart would not pump, and the human being would not be able to stay alive. So every movement that a person makes requires a use of a muscle, even subconscious. And next says muscle is connected to bone by a ligament. That's very important. Without ligaments, muscles would not be able to be connected to bone, the skeletal system. Next, we have here a diagram of the three types of muscle. We start on the left with smooth muscle. And we can see below that they interact with internal organs. They line the walls of a lot of internal organs and help the function and movement of a lot of the internal organs too. And then next we see cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscles are only in the heart, and obviously the heart is extremely important for function of a human being. So therefore cardiac muscle is also very important because the heart does not run without the cardiac muscle. And then we see skeletal muscle, which is kind of the stereotypical, I guess you could say, most common viewed or thought about muscle when referring to the word muscle. It shows a leg in that picture, but obviously it's in your arms, it's in your abdominal area, it's from head to toe, and the skeletal muscles connect your muscles to your bones and are responsible for voluntary movements. And on the left, you'll see under smooth muscle and cardiac muscle says involuntary, and under skeletal it says voluntary. So let's talk a little bit more about the three types. Smooth muscle is found mostly in the walls of other organs and hollow vessels. Smooth muscle is spindle-shaped. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart. It has intercalated discs, and it has branching fibers. skeletal muscle positions and moves bony structures of the body. So skeletons and bones. And then it says skeletal muscles have the longest fiber length. So that's another thing is to keep in mind when thinking about the skeletal muscles. Their fiber length is a lot longer than cardiac muscle, even though they might look very similar to cardiac muscle in terms of pictures or viewing them through the microscope. And you can see in the bottom three, all the way to the left, that would be a smooth muscle. In the center would be cardiac muscle, and on the right would be a skeletal muscle. And next here we're supposed to discuss the physiology of a specific organ within our organ system. So I decided to do the physiology of a skeletal muscle, and I debated on this a bit because I know that there is a ton of different skeletal muscles, and so I thought I could pick a specific skeletal muscle to discuss, but instead I decided to pick skeletal muscle as a whole because I think in our class we learned more so about skeletal muscles and three types of muscles more so than a specific skeletal muscle, although we did at some point learn about the branching of the fibers in different skeletal muscles, but I decided to just do more of an overview of the entirety physiology of skeletal muscles as a whole. So first thing says skeletal muscle is found throughout the body and functions to contract in response to voluntary stimulus. And that contraction is referring to the movement of arms, legs, torso, neck, ankles, all those movements. And then it says skeletal muscle is composed of many cells referred to as muscle fibers ranging from 10 to 80 millimeters in diameter. So as we know, muscles can be all sorts of shapes, sizes, have different branches and extensions, but they do all have muscle fibers. Most fibers are the length of the muscle. So when you think of a muscle, for example, pectoral muscle or something pretty common like the biceps brachii, from the tendon to the other tendon, you would see the muscle fibers would pretty much go the entire length of the muscle until it hits one tendon or the other, and then it connects to the bone. And we have most skeletal muscles receive intervention from a nerve in the center of the muscle fiber. And then on the left, we have a diagram of a skeletal muscle. You can see it starts with the bone. The tendon is attached to the bone, and then the tendon attaches to the muscle, the skeletal muscle, and then gets a little bit more in depth, and it shows the epimysium and the perimysium going in further, some blood vessels between the different fascicles, and the fascicles are wrapped by perimysium, and there's endomysium between the fibers. Now we were supposed to discuss a modern recent medical diagnosis or something of that nature regarding skeletal muscles, so I decided to go with ankle sprain. This doesn't seem to be very significant when I thought of the different disorders that go along with muscles and skeletal muscles. Like, I came across disorders that would be considered more life-changing, for example, muscular dystrophy, but I did decide to settle on just talking about ankle sprains, and it's something that I've had a lot of experience with in life because I've played basketball and running, so I really just picked this because it interests me. I do have a student at the school that I work at who does have muscular dystrophy, and it's amazing to see how the withering away of skeletal muscles just kind of completely changed the way a human gait works and the function of their muscles. But anyways, that's for another time. So here we go. There are 3 grades of ankle sprains, and I think this is the part of ankle sprain that I find fascinating that a lot of people don't know. I think people think a sprain is a sprain, but it's very not true. So let's start with grade 1. If we look down to the right, you can see 3 different muscles. So as I'm reading this, you can kind of view down those bottom 3 muscles and use that as a reference for what happens to muscles and tendons during a sprain. Obviously, in the ankle, there is not necessarily a muscle that's being torn. A lot of times it's a tendon or ligament. But anyways, I'll give you an example. So grade 1, stretching or slight tearing of the ligament with mild tenderness, swelling, and stiffness. The ankle feels stable and is usually possible to walk with minimal pain. Yeah, so grade 1 is you kind of tweak your ankle, very minimal. Just maybe swollen for a few days, but you can walk on it. You can walk on it fine. Grade 2 is a more severe sprain, but an incomplete tear with moderate pain, swelling, and bruising. Although it feels somewhat stable, the damaged areas are tender to the touch, and walking is painful. I'd say grade 2 is the one I've experienced the most playing basketball, landing on other people's feet, and it hurts extremely bad. I've broken a bone before, and grade 2 ankle sprains to me hurt worse than the broken bone did. And one of the main things that interests me, or that I would want to point out about the grade 2 sprain, is that it has incomplete tearing. So a lot of people, when they hear sprain, they don't think things are being torn. I think they assume that ligaments, tendons, and muscles are being stretched, but that's actually not accurate. There's tearing in the ligaments. So grade 2 would be a partial tear. So now we go to grade 3. This is a complete tear of the affected ligaments with severe swelling and bruising. The ankle is unstable and walking is likely not possible because the ankle gives out and there's intense pain. So pretty much grade 3, that means that it has been, at least one of the ligaments has been completely torn. So to go a little bit further and to talk about some treatments that have been going on recently for ankle sprains, ligamentous reconstruction with tendon graft has been the gold standard in the management of severely damaged ligaments. Treatment for sprained ankles and torn ligaments in the ankle have come a long way in the last 20 years. Doctors are still working to be able to reproduce the original ultrastructure of the ligament. So pretty much, you can do somewhat ligament reconstruction with a tendon graft, but you cannot completely regrow or naturally regrow these ligaments that are torn, which is one of the things that makes it difficult and not a good injury to have, because it's not like a bone. When you break a bone, it grows back stronger. Ligaments do not do or function the same way. And then there's a slight diagram here of a foot being sprained once again. Of course, that makes me cringe, as many people do. And then different tendons that would be affected commonly by an ankle sprain. And let's quickly discuss design. I talked about design of the skeletal system in my lab critical assignment. And the muscular system design to me is very similar to the skeletal system. To me, that those two systems are the basis for what we know as the human body. When we think about a human body, we think about something that resembles what we're looking at here, which is a combination of skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, and cardiac muscles that literally are the basis, along with the skeletal system, for the function of the human body. And just looking at this diagram, seeing the design of the muscles and how perfectly they're laid out to each one have an extremely important function. It's just very obvious that this has been made in a purposeful way and designed in a way that is not inefficient, and has been designed in a way to help humans overall function as best as possible with what we are given as a body. And it's just very fascinating to think about the combination of the skeleton and muscles, and how some of them are conscious and subconscious, and how important every single muscle is to the human body. And obviously there's some, you're looking at the hands or the phalanges, that you can live without them, but there's some that you definitely cannot. And obviously cardiac muscle and a lot of smooth muscle and even some skeletal muscle you can't live without. So but the design is just so symmetrical, and they all have a function, and it's pretty amazing when you actually take the time to look at it. I think anatomy is something that people a lot of times kind of take for granted and don't really look at the how complex and amazing the design of the human body is. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do skeletal system as an organ, because it's fascinating to me, and it's something that is us. I mean, the biggest percentage of our body would be water and muscle. And here are a couple references. The top one was a study that I used a lot for this, and bottom one is our textbook. So anyways, that's gonna wrap it up. I'm Ryan.